Oh,
the music.
okay, okay. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. This is the second live podcast that we do here at Lead MS2 Space. My name is Rafael. Thank you very much for coming. This is something that we intend to do every month with important members of the community. The purpose of this podcast is to be able to share with you and the people that are streaming some of the things that we're doing in the community when it comes to innovation. And the idea is not necessarily for this to be a one-way conversation, but also for it to create some sort of communication between the community and the members, the entrepreneurs that are here. I've been here about 4 or 5 years now, and one of the things that I realize is that there's a lot of people that live in the community that are doing amazing things, but many of them don't know who they are. Some of them are very transient in the sense that they come and go and they travel quite a bit. And the intent here is to be able for you all to get to know each other, for you all to get to see and interact with some of the folks that are doing things here in the community, and then at the end do a little bit of networking. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a probably 30 to 35-minute conversation about innovation in transportation with Mark, and I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. You'll have times for Q&A. There's a microphone in the back that it's available to you when the time comes for some Q&A. And then at the end, we'll close the podcast officially. We'll stop the live streaming, and then we'll be free to network. There's drinks and snacks in the back, and we can stay here as long as you all want. So thank you very much for being here. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for being here. And why don't you get us started with a little bit of background of who you are and how you got to the point where you are today with Beep.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. So again, Mark Reid. I'm the co-founder and SVP of Public Affairs for Beep. Originally from Jamaica, as most of you might have known. Started my journey with my son playing badminton, moving to Orlando because of badminton, having no clue what I was going to do, but ended up coming to Lake Nona, and the group here, Tavistock, the community was very forward-thinking. It's something that kind of aligned with what I was looking at doing possibly after settling here in Orlando. So moved here 2017, 2018, started working with Tavistock to put together this special project. Didn't realize how much it would take, but at the end of the day, it's a great business model so far, and we've been fortunate to get lots of bright people, including some in the audience, that have helped us to get to where we are. So 5 years fast forward, we're here. We're in 7 or 8 different states, including California. We're about to start in Hawaii. Fell in love with this neighborhood, Lake Nona. Joined the Rotary, joined the Chamber of Commerce, became a director on both, and just very involved in the community. So I don't want to ramble on, but I'm very grateful to be here today, and a lot of it is because of some of you here and some who are listening to the stream online.
Well, great. Thank you for that background. So let's get into the meat of the conversation. So we're talking about innovation in the world of transportation. So if we look back, specifically if you look back 5 years ago to where we were from your point of view in the world of transportation to where we are now to where we are going. Take us to that journey, what you saw as you got involved more and more, because your background was not in transportation initially. I know we share a common background in telecommunications, back in the day,
Yep.
right? So you got involved in the world of transportation. You saw some things, you started interacting with the city, but times are different now. So let's get started with what have you seen over the past 5 years, and then we can go into what's happening now and then evolving into what's coming.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I had no clue I'd be in this thing. We had other plans in the same transportation line, but different sector of the transportation industry. So 5 years ago, we started with some autonomous vehicles, It took us a while to figure out how to get them to run without hitting sidewalks or trees. The technology at the time was late braking. It uses LiDAR, it uses radars, and a couple other things. LiDAR is using light to detect objects. Radar is using radio frequencies. At the time, we went with the most sophisticated technology that was available to us. Years passed by, as technology evolved, we started looking at different OEMs, different suppliers, different components, and again, it's really reaching out to see what's available throughout the world, not just the U.S. Funny enough, we started out in the U.S. and then we ended up in France. So we got the first vehicles from France, and at the time they were the most commercially available vehicles. A lot has happened since then. If you're familiar, most of you might be familiar with Tesla. They use cameras. We use LiDAR. And now there's a fusion of LiDAR and cameras in the new technology. So what we're looking at now is a composition of both technologies being redundant in their own lane and redundant to the other one. So you have LiDARs, cameras, radars, and they're all redundant to each other, and they rely on each other. So you have technology, which we didn't have 5 years ago, looking at using like AI technology to determine and predict what the next movement will be within the 3 different levels of technology. So that's the autonomous side. On the vehicle side, there are a bunch of, so it's a wide sector. It's public transit and it's private transit. The public transit, you're looking at buses, shuttles. The private, you're looking at rideshare and personal cars like a Tesla. So when you look at those 2 different buckets, public and private, there's different regulation required. There's different technology required. And in public transit, it's a little more difficult, especially from the regulatory side. They want to make sure that whatever technology we use at the time is safe. It has to be safe, it has to be reliable, and it has to be secure in all ways. So we started there. As time evolves, there's more technology available. And I keep going back to autonomous, but then it really has to do with the entire auto industry. Mary Barrow, who is the CEO for GM, said some time ago that there's going to be more change in this decade than we've had in 100 years in the automotive industry. And me looking in closer and closer, that's absolutely true. I mean, we're having, if you think about like the horse and buggy days, we talk about all these different transitionary periods. Horse and buggy, people got excited. Cars came into effect. People got concerned because the blacksmiths and the vets and the groomers would lose jobs. It's really just a transition. So it's transitioning from horse and buggy to cars, more sophisticated, cars that rely on technology that relies on AI. So throughout the last 5 years, it's such a transition. And the next 5 years is going to be even more critical overall. So we're looking at things like, if you look at the entire ecosystem for transportation, you have a couple of things that you have to worry about. One, workforce. Workforce development. There's a whole transition from a guy who used to fix his ICE engine, which is internal combustion engine, to what we have now, electric motors. So you have that movement. You have hydrogen-powered vehicles. So there's a lot of technology over the last 3 to 5 years that have started to become production vehicles. Who is there to fix it? Who is certified to fix it? In the autonomous world, there's the high-voltage battery, which is a whole level of technology by itself and skill sets. There's the electric motor, which is a whole other set. It's not the guy who used to work on his BMW engine. It's more an IT guy, computer guy, who is accustomed to that industry. And then last but not least, there's the autonomous kit. The LiDARs, the radars, the cameras. It's a whole different set of skills required to do those things. So all this throughout these years now, where are we now? We're now at a position where you have all these different areas of expertise. You also need to get certification on these things. You can't work on a shuttle now. The typical mechanic would know nothing about a shuttle now. And this is just within the last 5 years. To my knowledge, there are less than 50 people who can get these shuttles to run. There are less than maybe 5%, and I could be wrong, this is just a guesstimate, of people who are qualified to work on electric vehicles. So again, we're looking at a transition of electric vehicles. By 2030, they claim that more vehicles will be electric than gas. Who is there to fix it? So that's a workforce side of it. The regulatory side, not a big deal. Public regulation, private regulation, different. When you move passengers, goods, services, it sounds easy, but at the end of the day, moving people is very important. To NHTSA, which is the National Highway Safety, they are responsible for giving you permits, how you operate on public road. So traditionally, you had FMVSS vehicles, and that's Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. And at the end of the day, those vehicles had steering wheels, brakes, rear view mirrors, traditional things, right? Now you have cars that are looking at coming without steering wheels. You have the shuttles and those things. And at the end of the day, it really means a whole mindset, how you move people from point A to point B. So I know I've been rambling on a lot. There's a lot more to ramble on. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That sets us up for the conversation. So let's zoom in on a couple of things you mentioned. I'm old enough to have seen multiple technology transitions that typically tend to scare people. People tend to have a knee-jerk reaction to technology as something that's going to take jobs away. And the way that I look at it as a technologist is, yeah, it's true that some jobs may go away, but there's a whole slew of new jobs that come with the technology. There's also a whole new set of responsibilities and a new set of collaborations that have to take place in order for the technology to become useful to a community, whether it's a community like Lake Nona or a community like Orlando or nationwide. That requires for all the moving parts to actually do their part. Mm-hmm. Right? You have the people who are making the vehicles, like you said. You have the legislation. You have the municipalities, the mm-hmm. private sector. All that has to come into cohesion. And at the end of the day, the community has to be aware of what are all those moving parts. Mm-hmm. There's an education element to that as well that you and I have discussed in the past.
Right.
People need to now be educated to be ready for the new technology, right? And people need to be aware this is coming, right? So what are some of the things from an education point of view that you've been doing to try to create awareness that these things are coming and that we need to start preparing the workforce for when it comes?
So a couple of things, especially in my industry. We've worked with STEM programs, so you have these programs all over Florida right now that starts from middle school, high school, going into colleges. A lot of them, especially the colleges, it's geared for people who figured, let's not go the traditional route of becoming a lawyer, a doctor, a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer. I don't like school. I want to fix stuff. So there's Florida State College of Jacksonville that I've been working closely with. There's Seminole State that's looking on programs as well. And these colleges have actually gone out and created courses and content and start to develop a program. So what they're having now is an associate degree program that teaches you on electric motors, on batteries, on autonomous kits, things like that, things that will come in the next generation set of vehicles. So now you have different levels of autonomy, but nobody knows about it. Nobody knows how to fix it. There's no preventative maintenance, because you have no idea what on earth you're maintaining, right? So SAE has level 0 to level 5, 6 different levels of autonomy. And it's not just autonomy, it's really driving a vehicle, it's cruise control, it's lane change, all those things you have to learn, but you have to get certified to fix and maintain these things. So from an educational perspective, we have a couple of Florida colleges that have been that have been promoting status certification on fixing these things, on being certified. So there's a 2-year program. They're about 75% to completion on a program for like mechatronics, which is an associate program, 60 credit hours. There are about 45 credit hours certified so far from the state, which will then populate to all the other things. So the other thing we have to look at is how does this become scalable? Because it's not about the autonomous industry. It's about the electric car industry. It's about buses. All these new buses, people are looking at electric buses, but who manages and maintains these things? So it's a challenge, and I think Florida is ahead of the curve in terms of getting people certified to be able to fix these things.
So let's zoom out from that for a moment, right? So now let's just assume that that part is taken care of in the next couple of years. If you zoom out, now you need an infrastructure to support that, right? Traffic regulations, the entire IoT that is underneath the smart city grid now needs to take into account these types of vehicles and how they're operating them, and who's operating them. So tell us a little bit more about what you see as far as where we've been and where we're going from a point of view of the infrastructure that's required for transportation to get to where we're eventually going.
Yeah, so there are two different levels of infrastructure. One is the environment, and the other one is the telecommunication side of it. So all these new vehicles have data going back and forth. If any have Mercedes, Audi, Volvo, BMW, they all collect data and go into the cloud somewhere and is stored. And a lot of that information transitions back into other vehicles, other information. So you're talking about an ecosystem that really has physical and wireless technology being able to communicate back and forth, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure. The traffic lights need to be talking to the beeps of this world, the Teslas of this world, the first responders. So first responders have first right to go through a traffic light. But a Tesla uses a camera. They're not in sync. So we need to have that level of connectivity, a universal code that everybody has access to and is integrated to. So that's that. There's crosswalks. There's smart technology used on traffic lights now. There's smart technology used on street lights, communicating. There's information about what the traffic flow is, traffic optimization. There's traffic forecasting. So there are a number of things that you gather from a lot of data going back and forth. So infrastructure-wise, you're talking about all those things. And then there's a telecom infrastructure. When we have twice as much, 3 times as much, 5 times as much over the next 5 years, how do you have all that data transferring back and forth in an efficient and effective way so that when a police overrides a traffic light management system, everybody knows and everybody's in sync? So there's a huge infrastructure gap I think we need to start looking at. So there's an infrastructure gap from telecom, and there's also the infrastructure at the traffic light level. You don't want a Tesla not to be in sync with the first responder or any other vehicle that has a traffic light management system.
So that's where we are today, right? We have technology at work. We have vehicles that you can see them, driving around here that work. There's still some work to do on the legislation side. If you travel to Europe, you see that in places like Germany, autonomous vehicles are allowed to do more than they're allowed to do here, right? So, we're working towards that. But all of this comes together in this whole idea of a smart city. And again, when you zoom out and you talked already about, from a technological point of view, you're talking about the actual nuts and bolts of the vehicle itself, how the vehicle navigates itself through the environment. That in itself is a world of technology that involves AI, ML, and large language models, in addition to all the rest of the technology. Now we're talking about the infrastructure. And then we talk about how the city itself manages itself. So from a smart city point of view, a smart city that is interested in innovation in transportation, because let's be clear, smart city can mean 10,000 different things, right? Transportation happens to be just one of the segments that it's in the verticals of a smart city. So from a transportation point of view, what has to happen for a city to call itself a smart city?
So a couple of things, and we talked about the different pillars, the workforce, the connectivity, and so forth. A smart city, to me, and this is my own perspective, because people are still trying to define what on earth is a smart city. Again, going back to Lake Nona, I think Lake Nona gets it. They're not there yet, but they're absolutely aware of what is required, and they're working towards it. So things like underground fiber that connects vehicles. You have these point of presence, so you have this wireless connectivity, but this wireless connectivity runs on a backbone somewhere, and the backbone is on the fiber laid underground. So you have fiber, you have, and again, you have to have rules and regulations. You have to have people who understand the technology. So we have a group of people here in Lake Nona, and we're sitting right here in a lab that's very creative and innovative. But you need all these like minds. There's no one answer to becoming a smart city. There are many different components of becoming a smart city. And I think we're getting there slowly but surely. But there's a lot to learn. I'm not aware of any community that we could say is 100% smart city. Because as the technology evolves, you rely on other things, data, technology, most importantly, communications. How do you transfer data coming from 10,000 cars running through here throughout the day back to a cloud somewhere? And then how do you send that data back to cars individually? So you have all these Mercedes, Volvo, BMWs that are transmitting data back and forth. How do you fill that capacity? And then the other side to it, how do you charge all these things? So when you have whatever the number will be in 5 years, you have, let's say, 70% electric cars. How do you charge 70% of all the cars that pass now? What kind of conduits do you need? What kind of charging capability? How big does the grid have to be? Because the more you get technologically advanced, is the more it relies on wireless connectivity and transmission of data wireless. You have the backbone, which is the underground fiber, but at the end of the day, it has to land somewhere, and it has to be able to transmit all this thing wirelessly and put it somewhere. We talk about putting it in the cloud. It's not in the cloud. It's somewhere on the ground with the capacity to hold and maintain all that data that comes in.
So from a job creation point of view, which I know it's a big topic these days, and rightfully so, we've talked about, of course, the manufacturers of the vehicles. I mean, there's jobs there, whether they're shuttles or semis or cars like Tesla and others. Then you have jobs available for the people that need to do maintenance and repair. There will be accidents, and there has to be repairs. Then you have job creation from the management side. You have to have a control center, a dashboard, where people are monitoring what's happening to each vehicle. How are they flowing with the traffic or not so much? There's job creations on the people that develop all the algorithms and all the AI that goes underneath all of that. What are we missing? Is that pretty much it, or is there anything else?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we can go into finer details because each of those components we talked about, the batteries, the motors, it requires levels of regulation. AI, for example, that's a big deal right now. AI does a lot for a lot of things, but it does a lot of evil for a lot of things, and it has the potential to go more. So how do you regulate AI? How do you watch what people are doing 2 a.m. in their bedrooms? It's becoming a problem in that it can do more harm than good if we're not careful, if we don't look at getting regulation in place, if we don't look at understanding it more and sensitize everybody on how it works and what it's used for and the positive side of it. So to me, that's something that we're really, you know, I really am concerned about AI and where we're going with it. Great thing, it increases productivity, efficiency, but at the end of the day, it can tear you down in one day. So it's something that I'm always trying to figure out. And I challenge everybody here, because I'm not the bright guy here, many bright guys here, to go ahead and figure out how these things work and contribute, figure out how we make sure the good guys win.
So let me throw something at you on that, because that's obviously a topic of conversation you hear everywhere. You know, so everybody's concerned about AI. The way that I see AI is just another technology. Evidently, it's a lot more than past technologies, right? I'll throw an example at you, and I know if Dexter is here, he'll second this. But years ago, again, dating myself here a little bit, but I remember the famous chess match between Deep Blue and Garry Kasparov, who at the time was a chess master, worldwide champion. He had become a celebrity when he beat Anatoly Karpov years before. But there was a computer, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was IBM who developed it, called Deep Blue, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 1997 when this took place, or somewhere in that range. And the computer basically embarrassed a very smart man, right? To the point that he felt like he was being cheated, like somehow the machine cheated and beat him in a way that he wasn't supposed to. And the story goes that he was upset, he was embarrassed, he went into seclusion for a while, and he came out with this thought of the centaur, that mythological creature of half man, half horse. Mm-hmm. And his idea was that because of advancements in technology, it is not uncommon to think that a computer can actually beat a human being in quantities of calculations. However, if a computer or a machine is designed to work with a human, no single computer can beat a human with a computer working, in unison. So he's started schools where they teach kids how to go about using computers in a way that is useful, so that as technology advances, the risks of machines taking over, as in the Terminator movies, gets minimized, right? So at the end of the day, is how we use the technology, is how we go about it. And it is also about not how the manufacturers use the technology, not how the different companies, but how the community embraces it and mm-hmm. puts in place the mechanisms so that it's not misused. So I'll throw that at you and see your thoughts on it, but in my mind, one way to prevent AI from doing the possible things that will be detrimental for the community is for the community to take charge, mm-hmm. and the community to become involved, and the community to become educated on what are the things that AI can do, and in this case, in the world of transportation and innovation, and become part of the process instead of waiting for someone else to figure it out. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm not a very bright guy when it comes to AI, but when it comes to transportation, I have a few ideas. So AI is being used a lot now in traffic forecasting. What does the traffic look like in the next 5 years here in Lake Nona? What does it look like downtown? We have 1,000 people coming into Orange County every week. So what does the population look like, and what does the traffic look like in 5 years? So AI manages a lot of these things now, saying, okay, in 5 years, you're going to have 3 times more traffic. You're going to have more vehicles. Some cities, and they're trying to work at the smart city side, say, okay, let's put all these vehicles on the outside. So Lake Nona, for example, has a visionary idea on how do we move vehicles outside and have this first mile, last mile, so that if you need to get from here to Park Pizza, for example. It's a little too far to walk because it's too hot, too cold, but not far enough for you to jump in the car here and then find parking there. So the solution is to pull the cars on the outside, right? But AI does a lot of that. It calculates and it forecasts how many people per hour. So you're maximizing all these vehicles. You're doing route assessment. You're doing maximization on the utilization of the vehicles themselves. Like if the vehicle holds 10, then you know you need 50 vehicles over the next 2 to 3 days to move people from point A here to point B in the town center. So it's doing things like it's forecasting if 50,000 cars run on this road every day, the rate of deterioration on the road itself is a problem. So the AI will calculate and measure, okay, in the next 6 months, you're going to have potholes, and they're going to become much more prevalent over the next 2 years. So it helps you to determine all these things. Other things you look at is like the traffic flow in the morning. What is peak hour traffic? We have a very famous joke within my company that we do not operate from 7 in the morning to 9 because that's peak period. People get really frustrated when there's something in the road making you late for work, making you late for school. But with AI, you can calculate a lot of that. It will determine, okay, this is not the best time to be on the road. But as the technology evolves, the vehicles will get faster, they'll get brighter, using AI to calculate all these different factors that we have to deal with.
Well, I want to make some room for questions for Mark. I do have a few, but I'd like to hear from the crowd. There is a microphone in the back. Are there any questions for Mark?
Wow.
Oh, if not, then we're going to pick. Oh, there's one.
Oh, there we go. Good question. So we are more of a service-oriented company. So we don't build the vehicles, we operate the vehicles. So we have software that we build, and that software will manage a better passenger experience. So we buy vehicles from everybody. We're vehicle agnostic. We have different platforms. We have different software that comes from the OEM. So at the end of the day, we really provide the operational aspect of it. So we're a service provider. Being a service provider, we have many things we have to consider. Passenger safety, reliability, and comfort. So there are software programs that we develop. You sit beside one of the guys who helped us to develop a lot of it. And it's very intricate, it's very detailed, because at the end of the day, we have to build software that integrates with different platforms, different vehicles, and so forth. The last part of your question, we also have many challenges in terms of the regulatory side of it. We have to ensure that the vehicle is safe, it's operational. We have to report to the governing bodies, near misses, when we have to, what we think is an improvement, anything that we think was an issue. So at the end of the day, we stay in our lane. We consider ourselves first mile, last mile type operation. We're not interested in getting people from here to downtown Orlando. We want to stay in these little niche areas, town centers, schools, airports, back office type operation, where it's really just that last mile that's too far to walk, but too near to jump in the vehicle to find something. So we'll stick in that little niche market.
So let me zoom in on that a little bit. So how far away are we from that type of service, from being fully autonomous? And of course that's going to change from state to state, obviously, right? Because different states have different legislation, and so forth. But we will get to a point where the vehicles are allowed, if you will, to be fully autonomous. But we're not there yet. So how do you foresee that happening, and what has to happen for us to get there?
So that's a tough question. There's no real answer to that. I cannot sit here and tell you when we'll be fully driverless, fully operational in autonomous mode, which is level 5. I think we're years away from that. It's a combination of everything. One is that more vehicles need to talk to each other. More infrastructure needs to talk to vehicle. People need to be sensitized, and people need to understand how the technology works so that they don't fall asleep at the wheel thinking that it's going to take them from point A to point B. There are other companies that have tried it, and they've had to revert back to using operators and ensuring that there's some level of monitoring. So we have 2 or 3 different levels of monitoring right now. We have supervisor level on the ground. We have a monitoring center that basically is in communication with all the vehicles that we have throughout the U.S. But at the end of the day, it is really difficult to say, can the vehicles do it? Most of them can. They're autonomous kits. They're smart, but not smart enough. You mentioned earlier about the computer and the human being. I think that's where our sweet spot is right now. Even when we get rid of operators, we're going to put them in a command center, and they'll be watching these vehicles. It's kind of like how drones operate in the Army. You have one guy managing 10 different drones, doing 10 different missions in 10 different countries. But at the end of the day, when that drone has a problem, it reverts back to a decision from a human being. So I really couldn't answer that.
No, that's a great answer. Any other questions for Mark?
Make it easy, Austin.
I wanted to ask about like public adoption and how like when you started like the public engagement and the number of people who would ride the bus on a daily basis and how it's kind of evolved from then until now and like different things you've been doing to drive up engagement and other things like that.
So it was challenging in the beginning. Most people didn't believe in the technology. The trend at the time, and it could have changed now because it's more publicly known, but at the time we had the younger generation more excited about trying this technology. So they adopted easily to this technology. Middle-aged, old guys like me, not so quick to jump on it. They were a little skeptical. It's going to kill my dog, my cat. It's going to run over my ball. But the reality is that the technology is as such that it reacts 3 times faster than a human being. It doesn't text. It's never under the influence of alcohol. So you have all these different factors that when you focus on the technology, and people know more about it. Like nobody knew about this thing 5 years ago. I didn't know about this thing 7 years ago. I'd be lying if I told you I knew what the heck autonomous shuttles were. But over the years, you become involved, more detailed, and other companies get involved, and it's really an ecosystem that helps you. So you find that you have to go into communities. Before we go into deployment into any community, we have community engagements. We work with the fire, with the police, with the emergency services. How do you stop these things, right? How do you stop a shuttle? When you put your lights on, how do you pull over a driverless shuttle? So we have to sensitize the first responders. We have to sensitize the community as well to tell them that, look, it has 3 LiDARs, 2 cameras, 3 radars, and between all those components, they're much sharper than you are as a human being. And if you look at a vehicle that has, and not just autonomous, even some of these more modern cars, 2-3-year-old cars, they have cameras that are looking in all different directions. You have 2 eyes looking at one side. I don't look at you with my right eye and this guy with my left. Everything is focused there. With these cars, they have this wide perception, but you have to educate people. We have to start it from middle schools, high schools, colleges, universities, because at the end of the day, the more you know about the technology, is the easier, and you'll feel more comfortable trying it. For example, I remember when we just launched service, there was a more matured lady, more mature than me, and she was just adamant, this thing is going to kill people, it's going to blah, 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 blah. And I sat with her, spent a whole dinner with her at my expense. And, but it worked, because at the end of the dinner, I convinced her, just try it. I mean, you have nothing to lose. It's 12 miles per hour. What the heck could happen at 12 miles per hour? You get a headache, big deal. So she tried it, and you know, she was like this in the beginning. And then by the end of the trip, she was talking with me, and I'm like, so you realize how relaxed you were within 10 minutes of a drive. So now she understands the technology, she sees how it works, and there's a certain level of redundancy that, to be honest with you, human beings don't have.
I think I'm not the only one that's thinking of use cases where a cop is pulling over a driverless vehicle. What will be the reasons for that? But anyway, any other questions from the back? Yes, please.
I'm sorry about my English, but let's try. What are the most promising transportation technologies emerging right now, besides the autonomous vehicles? And which do you believe will have the most significant impact over the next decade? I want to know the trends for the future.
Could you repeat that question, please?
I would like to know more about the trends for the future.
The trend?
The trends.
Trends.
For the future.
What's coming?
Yeah, what's coming next besides the autonomous vehicle? What do you think?
So there are a couple of things. So you have flying cars. You have vehicles that will be electric, autonomous flying cars. Right now, most planes are autonomous. So there's some level of autonomy that's coming to everything. There's cruise control, there's lane stay, things like that, that actually are components of the autonomous. So whether we like it or not, autonomous is coming. Will it be level 5 autonomous over the next few years? I doubt that very much. That's yet to be seen. But the trend is AI, believe it or not. It's going to be predicting a lot in transportation, both on the public and private side. There's the technology itself. As it evolves, you're going to rely more and more on technology. If you think about, well, I'm dating myself. When I used to work on my own cars, it was carburetor, headers, engine. Screws, you pull it off, clean it out, blow it out, fix it, add it back. Now, when I look in my engine, I'm like, holy crap, where do you start? And it's going to become more sophisticated. If you look at an electric motor, no, that drives, say, for example, a Tesla. If you look at what propels you 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, you'd be shocked. And can you fix it? No, you have no idea what to fix, because it's a whole different dynamics, whole different concept in how you move people from A to B and the rate at which you move people. The speed is incredible. The technology has changed from the traditional engines to electric, that the torque is immediate. So when you launch, you know, mom is going to the supermarket in her Model X, there's not a Tesla, there's let's say a Lamborghini beside you. She will eat that alive with the groceries and the kids in the car. So you're looking at a transformation of technology where you had these original engines with drive shafts and axles and everything. So you have 4 or 5 different components that need to propel you from 0 to 60. With the electric motors, which most people don't know how to fix, it propels you much faster and it gets to the ground. So rubber meets the road much faster because you have less moving parts. So a lot of it is technology. Some of it is regulation as well. In the past, the US regulation, they're getting there, but they're still behind where the technology is. And like everything else in the world, you know, the technology is usually way ahead because, again, you don't have enough people who know about this thing. So you have to sensitize everybody on this thing. And again, that's why I challenge most of you here. A lot of you are very computer literate. Google, Chat, GPT, all these things, all these tools that you have can help us to get better at these things. I know I rambled on a lot again, but hopefully I answered the question.
More sustainable as well, right?
What's that?
More sustainable as well.
More sustainable.
Sustainability is a big thing as well. Electric motors, you know, less carbon in overall footprint. The other thing is the charging. So you have all the sustainability, but it requires some level of charging that right now we don't have the infrastructure for. I'm sure the power companies and the grids are being prepared for this massive explosion of electric motors. Because remember, every vehicle that you have on the road now, just imagine it, they're all electric. Where do you charge it? You're going to be fighting for 10 charging stations in here. So it has to become populated over. Tesla has a good model. If you drive a Tesla, you have much less challenge charging than a Porsche Taycan. I had the experience the other day. It takes me 3.5 hours from Fort Lauderdale in a gas car, and I'm stopping to put gas in it. It takes me 7 hours with a Taycan just because you don't have access to charging.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Any other questions from Yes, Dex.
Go easy, Dex. Go easy.
This one is easy. How do you feel about Elon Musk robotaxis? Announcement is coming 6 years, I think, since, what do you think is the likelihood there are going to be robotaxis and all these Teslas are going to be a fleet taking everybody around?
I'm sure it will happen. I don't know much about it other than what I saw in the news, and what the news said is that the regulator bodies didn't even know that he was coming with a robotaxi. So there are other rules and regulations that you'll have to comply with before actually launching it. In terms of what they are they going to be fully autonomous? Are they going to have no steering wheel? I don't know enough about it.
Okay, so Teslas don't have LiDAR. That's another question.
They don't.
There's millions of Teslas that don't have LiDAR, which suggests it may never work. Do you think you're in a better position than Tesla because of what you said prior? And I think GM has LiDAR, Waymo has LiDAR, a couple of them have LiDAR. Do you think is that going to be the differentiating factor of which company is successful? Assuming,
I think it's a fusion of the technology. It's not LiDAR or camera. It's both. It's radar, it's LiDAR, and camera working together. So it's like 3 guys going down the road. One can see much further. Rain start falling, the other one sees better. And then there's a building in the way and there's a reflection, and the other one will never see it. So at the end of the day, they're working simultaneously to say, okay, can you see that wall? No, I can't see it. Okay, I'll take over. So all this is happening simultaneously because think about like a Tesla. There was an incident, and I hate to call names, but these are I like to be down to earth with everything so that people can relate to the stories. When you use a camera to detect lights, there's a police car in the road, it's flashing blue, red, all different colors. Once you have a glitch in the camera, you're going to run into that object just because at that point in time, the camera did not detect that it's red stop. It detected some other color and misinterpreted, hence an accident. So if you have 3 different levels of redundancy / skill sets, I think you'd be better off. So we are looking at different technology, and it will evolve. Maybe it changes in 2 to 3 years. That's why we don't get into the technology itself. We use OEMs who we consider have the best ability to detect these things, because at the end of the day, safety is our priority. If we're not comfortable, you might notice that we test a lot. We test at nighttime. We test at Suntrax, which is a FDOT-funded facility about 45 minutes from here. And it tests, there's an oval, so they test all sorts of autonomous vehicles. There's platooning that's being tested there. There are big trucks tested on this. And then on the infield, there's a mock city made up to test autonomous others, cars, shuttles, and so forth. So there's extensive tests that are done. And one of the things you do, you test all the different components and the technology to ensure that it's safe. So nobody's there yet. We don't know if this will be the end to all. I'm sure there's more technology that will evolve over the next few years. But at the end of the day, it's all about testing and ensuring that it's safe to operate.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, you guys ready to start drinking? Oh, we have one more question.
One more.
I have a follow-up on my previous question. So you said that you guys are in the first mile and last mile business, basically. So when I was thinking about that, there was another product that was in that same business recently, the electric scooter. We saw it, there was a lot of hype, a lot of companies gained a lot of valuation on it, but then the streets became flooded with them. Many competing companies in the same area, no one was able to take over the market unless a city said only one scooter company in our area, and all those companies, their stock valuations tanked. What prevents the autonomous vehicle shuttle space from having the same consequence happen to it?
It's all about risk. But I feel safer in an autonomous shuttle than a scooter. I have ridden scooters. At the end of the day, there are a few challenges. I've seen people crash, get hurt at 5 miles per hour on a scooter. Thank God, knock on wood. In the shuttle, you crash at 5 miles per hour. You might have a headache or something, but at the end of the day, we maintain our model. We stick to it. It has served us well so far, and with the technology evolving the way and the rate at which it's evolving, I think we have a better chance of survival than a scooter. And again, you know, other people have their own opinion of it, but scooters to me is not an alternative to electric public passenger vehicles. The person who rides a scooter, I wouldn't ride a scooter to work with my backpack. And that's just because I'm probably an old fart. But at the end of the day, I would not feel safe on a scooter running. A scooter, you know, you get knocked over by one pebble in the road. So it's what your preference is. Our preference is to maintain safety and to ensure that if the rain is falling, you don't get wet. If it's too cold, we have temperature control. If it's too hot, you still have temperature control. So it's our business model that we chose to stick to because we've had fairly good success with it so far.
Well, there's also the city design and planning process too, right? You know, so from a, you know, as a scooter has less of a chance of getting a city's attention to redesign itself, right? You know, you guys work with the cities as far as how the street needs to be laid out, you know, and how maybe some streets need to be repurposed, right? Like it's done in some areas so that the shuttles can actually navigate and have ownership of specific lanes, right? So there's that element of city planning and city design and infrastructure design that it's already been on the works.
Right.
So that, you know, there's already an investment from a city planning point of view.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Well, Mark, thank you so much for being here. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be my guest here. And please, those of you who are online, thank you for watching. We'll have another one of these in about a month. 3 Thoughts on Life from Lake Nona. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. It was a great experience.